Mira Novak adjusted her formal diplomatic uniform and tried to ignore the persistent itch at the back of her neck. The atmosphere in the Grand Hall of Harmonies was heavy with incense and expectation, making her skin prickle beneath the stiff fabric. "Remember," Captain Davin whispered beside her. "Small talk about their coral architecture, but avoid mentioning the Eastern Reef collapse. They're sensitive about ecological disasters." "I've read the briefing, Davin," Myra replied with a tight smile. 5 years as the Interstellar Alliance's lead negotiator had taught her to memorize cultural taboos better than her own birth date. The Thalassians value harmony above all else. "I won't disrupt it by mentioning their environmental catastrophes." Before Davin could respond, the enormous shell doors parted with a musical hiss. The Thalassian welcoming party emerged, moving with the fluid grace that had earned their species the nickname the Ocean Walkers among less diplomatic traders. Their bodies shimmered with bioluminescent patterns that pulsed in complex sequences, a living language Myra had studied but couldn't hope to read fluently. Their formal attire consisted of intricate shells and woven seaflora that draped elegantly over their slender frames. The Grand Sovereign Valna led the procession, towering over her attendants, her luminous skin shifting through patterns of formal welcome. Unlike the depictions in the briefing materials, she wore no crown. Thalassian royalty was marked by the complexity of their bioluminescence, not by metal ornaments. "Emissary Novak," the sovereign's voice resonated through the chamber, melodic yet authoritative. "The waters of Thalassia welcome you and your crew." Bowed precisely to the depth indicated in the protocol manual. "The stars shine favorably on our meeting, Grand Sovereign. The Interstellar Alliance extends its hand in friendship and commerce." The formalities continued with excruciating precision. Mira introduced her small delegation, Captain Davin, Science Officer Patel, Security Chief Orlovich, bowing at the appropriate angle for their rank. Then a disruption. A small commotion at the edge of the royal entourage caught Mira's attention. Young Thalassian, smaller than the others but with surprisingly intense bioluminescent patterns, was pushing forward against the gentle restraint of her handlers. "Sovereign Mother," the young Thalassian called out, her voice carrying the distinctive harmonic overtones of royalty. "The resonance is present." The ceremonial chamber went silent. The sovereign's patterns flashed in what Mira recognized as alarm or surprise. The diplomatic script Mira had memorized offered no guidance for this deviation. "Princess Neri," the sovereign said quietly, "return to your place." But the young princess was already moving forward, her eyes fixed on Mira with unsettling intensity. She approached until she stood directly before the human diplomat, close enough that Mira could see the delicate gill structures pulsing at the princess's throat. Neri inhaled deeply, her sensory tendrils extending slightly, a gesture considered intimate in Thalassian culture. Mira remained perfectly still, knowing that retreating would cause offense. "You," Princess Neri said with absolute certainty, "carry my resonance pattern." The chamber erupted in murmurs. The Grand Sovereign's patterns flashed rapidly commands, questions, perhaps warnings. Guards shifted positions. "I don't understand," Mira said carefully, looking to her team for guidance. Tell shook her head slightly. This wasn't in any of their briefings. Princess Neri reached out, almost touching Mira's face, but stopping just short. "Your cellular vibration, it matches the royal harmonic. You are my genetic resonator." The sovereign approached, her movements now stiff with what might be concern. "Remove the human delegation to the waiting chambers. Summon the resonance specialists." "Immediately." "Wait," Mira protested as Thalassian guards surrounded her team. "What's happening?" "We're here under diplomatic protection." Captain Davin moved protectively toward Mira, but froze when spear-like appendages extended from the guards' ceremonial staffs. "This is not a hostile action, emissary," the sovereign said, her voice carefully modulated. "But if what my daughter senses is true, you are far more than a diplomat to our world. You are a cosmic inheritance we thought lost." As they were escorted from the Grand Hall, Mira caught Patel's worried glance. "What the hell is a genetic resonator?" she whispered. Patel's expression was grave, something significant enough to derail a standard trade negotiation. And from the look on the sovereign's face, something that just changed your status from visitor to something else entirely. The doors closed behind them with a resonant tone that sounded ominously final. Myra's diplomatic career had included hostage situations, cultural misunderstandings, and one memorable incident involving a sacred plant that turned out to be sentient. But never before had she been identified as something she'd never heard of, by a princess who seemed absolutely certain of her claim. As they were led through corridors of living coral and pulsing bioluminescent light, Mira fought the unsettling feeling that she had just become more than an emissary of the Interstellar Alliance. Somehow, in the eyes of these aquatic aliens, she had become something else, entirely something tied to their royalty through biology. She didn't understand. And judging by the reactions of everyone in that throne room, her new designation was either a tremendous honor or a catastrophic complication, perhaps both. The resonance chamber resembled the interior of a massive seashell, with spiraling walls that caught and amplified every sound. Mira sat on a chair seemingly grown from living coral, surrounded by Thalassian scientists who moved around her with professional detachment. "Your discomfort is noted, Emissary Novak," said Chief Specialist Jorith, the lead scientist. Unlike other Thalassians, his luminescent patterns remained subdued, controlled. "But I assure you, the resonance scan is non-invasive." Mira fixed him with her diplomatic stare, neutral yet firm. "I'd appreciate understanding what exactly you're scanning for, Specialist." Jorith paused, his hand hovering over a console made of some organic material. His eyes, large and iridescent, like all Thalassians, regarded her with unexpected sympathy. "The resonance pattern Princess Neri detected is ... unusual," he said. "In our biology, certain genetic frequencies align between individuals, creating echo bonds. These bonds typically exist only within bloodlines. And she believes I share this with her. That's impossible. We're not even the same species." Jorith's patterns shifted subtly. "That is precisely why the situation has caused such disruption." Captain Davin, who had insisted on accompanying Mira, stepped forward. "Still haven't explained what a genetic resonator actually does." Before Jorith could answer, the chamber door opened, and Princess Neri entered, followed by 2 attendants. The young Thalassian's patterns were vibrant with excitement. "You haven't begun?" she asked Jorith, her disappointment evident. "Princess, I was explaining the procedure to our guest." Neri approached Mira directly. "A resonator completes a genetic sequence, Emissary Novak. For generations, Thalassian royalty has sought resonators to stabilize certain inherited abilities. My mother found hers in the northern reefs. Never expected mine would come from the stars. I still don't understand how I could possibly. The scan will confirm it." Neri interrupted, her tendrils swaying with eagerness. "Please, just allow the process." Mira exchanged glances with Davin, who gave a reluctant nod. "Very well," she agreed. "Proceed." Jorith activated the console. The chamber filled with a humming that Mira felt rather than heard, vibrating through her bones. Crystalline structures descended from the ceiling, pulsing with soft light. "Remain still," Jorith instructed. His voice professional, but his eyes lingering on Myra's face with curious intensity. The sensation was strange, but not unpleasant, like being immersed in warm water while every cell in her body gently resonated. Minutes passed. The scientists exchanged glances, their patterns flickering in what Mira recognized as disbelief. Finally, Jorith shut down the system. He stared at the readings, then at Mira. "It's a perfect harmonic match," he said quietly. The princess was correct. Neri's patterns flashed triumphantly. "I knew it. The dreams were true." "Dreams?" Mira questioned. "I've dreamed of you," Neri said simply. "A figure from beyond our waters, carrying the missing notes of my sequence." Jorith turned to Mira, his professional demeanor slipping. "This is unprecedented. Your genetic structure contains elements that resonate precisely with the princess's royal lineage. It's as if your DNA completes a melody begun in hers." "That's biologically impossible," Mira stated flatly. "And yet here we are," Jorith replied, a hint of wonder in his voice. Later, In the private chambers assigned to the human delegation, Myra paced while her team processed this development. "They're treating you like some kind of cosmic lottery winner," Davin remarked. Science Officer Patel was reviewing data provided by Jorith. "It's fascinating, actually. Their genetics operate on principles we barely understand, harmonic resonance patterns that can apparently bridge across species." "I don't care how fascinating it is," Mira snapped. "I need to know what this means for our mission and, for me personally," Soft Chime announced a visitor. The door opened to reveal Jorith, standing alone without guards. "May I enter?" he asked Mira. Nodded, noticing how his patterns shifted subtly when their eyes met. "I've come to explain what wasn't said in the chamber," he began. "Being a royal resonator is sacred in our culture. Historically, when a sovereign finds their resonator, they form a lifelong bond. This bond enhances the royal's abilities to commune with our world's biosphere." "And what does the resonator get from this arrangement?" Mira asked sharply. Jorith's patterns dimmed slightly. "Extended life, enhanced perception, and in ancient times, a place in the royal household." The implication hung in the air. "My diplomat, not a genetic consort," Mira said firmly. "I understand," Jorith replied. "But you should know, Princess, Neri's abilities are exceptionally powerful, even by royal standards. Without a resonator, she risks losing control of them as she matures." Mira studied him carefully. "You care about her, been her scientific guardian since her hatching." His patterns shifted in a way Mira couldn't interpret. "There's more. The princess's abilities allow her to influence our planet's weather. Patterns crucial for our agricultural cycles. Without stabilization, you're saying. Your planet's climate stability depends on me forming some kind of bond with your princess?" "I'm saying the situation is complex," Jorith answered, his eyes meeting hers with unexpected intensity. "And that your arrival may be more than coincidence." As he left, Mira turned to her team. "Contact Alliance headquarters. We need guidance on how to handle this without causing an interplanetary incident. And if they want you to become this resonator?" Patel asked. Mira stared out the window at the alien ocean world, watching massive jellyfish-like creatures drift through the twilight waters. "Let's hope it doesn't come to that," she said quietly. But something inside her, something she couldn't explain, had responded to the resonance scan, like recognizing a song she'd never heard before. The Thalassian Royal Council chamber was designed like an amphitheater, with curved tiers descending toward a central pool where the Grand Sovereign floated, her luminescence casting patterns across the water's surface. Mira stood at the edge, uncomfortably aware of the 20 sets of alien eyes fixed upon her. "The verification is conclusive," announced Elder Vex, his ancient voice carrying surprising strength. "The human diplomat carries the harmonic sequence that complements our princess's genetic melody." Murmurs rippled through the chamber, some wondering, others clearly disapproving. "This is unprecedented," said Counselor Mizra, her patterns flashing with skepticism. "A non-Thalassian resonator? It violates traditions dating back to the first tide." And yet the Sovereign replied calmly, "The resonance does not lie. Science confirms what my daughter sensed instinctively." Mira cleared her throat. "If I may address the council?" The Sovereign nodded permission. "I respect your traditions and the significance of this discovery," Myra began. "However, I have responsibilities to the Interstellar Alliance that cannot be abandoned. Perhaps there's a compromise that honors both realities." Before anyone could respond, the chamber doors opened. Princess Neri entered, accompanied by Jorith, whose eyes immediately found Mira's.
Wait.
"I should be present for discussions about my resonator," Neri announced, her young voice nonetheless commanding attention. The Sovereign's patterns flashed with parental disapproval, and she nodded. "Very well." Neri approached Myra, stopping at a respectful distance. "Have you told her about the coming harmonic convergence?" Uncomfortable silence fell over the chamber. "What convergence?" Mira asked, looking between the princess and the council. Members, it was Jorith who answered, stepping forward with the confidence of someone accustomed to explaining difficult concepts. "Every 78 years, the Lasia's 3 moons align, creating tidal forces that destabilize our planet's biorhythms. Historically, the royal family uses their abilities to maintain balance during this period. And the next convergence?" Mira asked, already suspecting the answer. 14 days from now, Jorith confirmed. Mira fought to maintain her diplomatic composure. Convenient timing. Elder Vex rose, his ancient form trembling slightly. The resonance is not something we control, emissary. That you arrive now when our need is greatest suggests cosmic forces beyond our understanding. Or convenient mysticism to pressure me, Myra countered. The Sovereign raised a hand, silencing the Council's reaction. Your skepticism is understandable. Perhaps a demonstration would help you comprehend what's at stake. She gestured to her daughter. Neri's patterns shifted into intense configurations as she approached the central pool. Placing her hands on the water's surface, she closed her eyes in concentration. The water began to rise, defying gravity to form a perfect sphere that hovered between her palms. Within it, microscopic bioluminescent organisms arranged themselves into a miniature replica of Thalasia's ecosystem coral cities. Deep ocean trenches, even tiny representations of sea life. My daughter can connect with and influence every living system on our planet, the Sovereign explained. During the convergence, this ability must be precisely controlled, or destructive storms and tidal anomalies will threaten our cities. If demonstrating this point, Neri's concentration wavered. The water sphere destabilized, organisms within it scattering in chaotic patterns. Jorith moved quickly to her side, steadying her with a gentle touch. Even now, her abilities tax her. Strength, he explained to Mira. Without a resonator to harmonize with, the convergence energies could overwhelm her. Mira watched the young princess recover, noting the fear behind her determined expression. Whatever political game might be at play, the child's struggle seemed genuine. After the council session adjourned, Myra found herself walking with Jorith through a corridor of living coral that opened to a balcony overlooking the vast Thalassian ocean. 3 moons hung in the alien sky, noticeably closer to alignment than they had been when her ship arrived. "Do you believe any of this?" she asked him directly. Jorith's patterns shifted in what she was beginning to recognize as thoughtfulness. "I am a scientist emissary. I believe in observable phenomena. The resonance between you and Neri is real. The convergence is astronomical fact. The connection between these things." He paused. "That remains to be fully understood." "You're not exactly instilling confidence." His expression softened. "May I speak personally, rather than as the royal scientific advisor?" Mira nodded, curious. "I've watched Neri grow from a hatchling into a young royal with powers that sometimes terrify her. I've seen her searching the stars, describing dreams of someone who would help her carry this burden." His pattern shifted into something Mira hadn't seen before. "Whether by cosmic design or biological accident, you are that someone." The sincerity in his voice was difficult to dismiss. Mira found herself studying his features, the elegant structure of his face, the depth in his iridescent eyes. "There are worse fates than forming a connection with our world," he added softly. Before Mira could respond, Captain Davin's voice came through her communicator. "Mira, you need to return immediately. We've received a transmission from headquarters and we're detecting an unidentified vessel entering the system." As she turned to leave, Jorith caught her hand, a startlingly intimate gesture between their species. "Whatever you decide," he said, his patterns shifting into what she now recognized as concern. "Know that there are those here who would protect you, not just use you." Their eyes held for a moment longer than necessary before Myra pulled away, unsettled by her reaction to his touch. The diplomatic quarters had been transformed. Bioluminescent flora spiraled up the walls, pulsing gently in patterns that seemed to follow Mira's heartbeat. She stood before a reflection pool, barely recognizing herself in the ceremonial attire. The Thalassians had provided a flowing garment woven from some material that shifted between solid and translucent, embedded with tiny organisms that responded to her body's electrical impulses. "You look adapted," Captain Davin commented, failing to hide his concern. "Diplomatic necessity," Mira replied, though she couldn't deny a certain fascination with her transformed appearance. "What's the status on that unidentified vessel?" "Still maintaining orbit on the far side of the moon," Galactic security claims it's a routine trader, but their patterns suggest otherwise. Science Officer Patel entered, carrying a data tablet. The analysis of the resonance bond is complete. It appears temporary proximity is sufficient to stabilize the princess's abilities. A permanent life bond isn't necessary, despite what their traditions suggest. Relief flooded through Myra, so I can help them through this convergence without committing to a lifetime as some sort of genetic stabilizer. Theoretically, yes, although ... Patel hesitated. What aren't you telling me? The resonance works. Both ways, Mira. Your neural scans show changes already enhanced perception, increased sensory processing. The bond is affecting you too. Before Mira could process this information, a chime announced a visitor. The door opened to reveal Jorith, dressed in formal scientific regalia that accentuated his tall, elegant form. It's time, he said simply. The resonance chamber had been transformed into a ceremonial space. Water channels circled the floor, flowing with bioluminescent currents. Above, crystalline structures caught and refracted light in hypnotic patterns. Princess Neri waited in the center, her young face solemn with responsibility. The sovereign and council members observed from elevated platforms, while Mira's crew watched from a designated diplomatic area. Jorith guided Mira to her position opposite Neri. His hand lingered on her arm, his pattern shifting in a way that Mira had begun to interpret as personal concern rather than professional interest. The ceremony creates a controlled amplification of the natural resonance between you, he explained quietly. Allow yourself to feel the connection without resistance, and if I resist, Mira whispered, his patterns dimmed, then it will fail. This must be willing on both sides. As he stepped away, their fingers touched that sent an unexpected current through Myra's body. The ceremony began with Thalassian harmonics, vocalizations that resonated through the water channels and up through the floor. Myra felt the vibrations in her bones, a not unpleasant sensation that seemed to align with her heartbeat. Princess Neri stepped forward, extending her hands. With respect for your sovereignty, I ask for your harmonization, she said formally. Myra took the princess's hands, surprised by their warmth. Immediately, she felt a connection not invasive. But like recognizing a familiar melody played in a different key, the resonance technicians activated the chamber's amplification system. Crystal structures descended, surrounding them with light that pulsed in complex patterns. The water channels began to glow more intensely. Mira felt it building a synchronization between her body's rhythms and Neri's. It was unlike anything she'd experienced. As if parts of her genetic code that had always been dormant were suddenly awakening, Neri's patterns brightened dramatically. I can feel the balance, she whispered, awe in her voice. The ceremony reached its peak. The chamber filled with harmonics that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. Mira felt herself expanding somehow, her awareness extending beyond normal boundaries. She could sense the princess's consciousness, not her thoughts, but her presence, her essential nature. And more surprisingly, she could sense Jorith watching. His concern and another emotion she wasn't prepared to name radiating from him, then disruption. A discordant sound cut through the harmonics. The chamber, doors burst open. Armed figures entered, their movements aggressive, their weapons aimed at the ceremonial circle. Separatists. Someone shouted, chaos erupted. Council members scattered. Guards moved to protect the sovereign. Mira instinctively pulled Princess Neri behind her, shielding the child with her body. The attackers fired sonic weapons that shattered several crystal structures. The Thalassian guards returned fire with energy weapons that sent arcs of blue lightning across the chamber. Through the confusion, Mira spotted a figure moving purposefully toward them, not one of the attackers, but Counselor Misra, her patterns. Flashing with grim determination, something clutched in her hand. The offworlder cannot be allowed to bond with our princess, Misra hissed. Raising what appeared to be a ceremonial dagger, Jorith intercepted her, grappling with the counselor. This is madness, Misra. The resonance is real. It's abomination, Misra snarled. Our bloodlines must remain pure. In the struggle, the dagger slashed across Jorith's arm. He fell back, luminescent blood seeping from the wound. Something surged within Myro, protective rage mixed with the still active resonance energy. Without conscious thought, she reached out toward the water channels. They responded to her gesture. Water rising and surging toward Misra with shocking force. Knocking the counselor off her feet, everyone in the chamber froze, staring at Mira. Impossible, Elder Vex whispered. She's accessing Thalassian abilities. Neri stared up at Mira with wide eyes. The resonance is complete. We're truly bonded. Security forces subdued the remaining attackers. Medical attendants rushed to Jorith, who waved them away, his eyes fixed on Mira with new understanding. The Sovereign approached, her patterns reflecting astonishment. It seems, Emissary Novak, that this bond has given you more than we anticipated. No non-Thalassian has ever demonstrated control of our elemental connections. Mira stared at her hands, feeling new awareness coursing through her. What's happening to me? The resonance works both ways, Jorith said, echoing Patel's earlier words as he approached, clutching his injured arm. You've stabilized the princess's abilities, but she has awakened latent potential in you. His pattern shifted into something complex and intimate as he added softly, You're becoming something new. Neither fully human nor Thalassian, but a bridge between worlds. The observation deck provided a panoramic view of Thalessia's 3 moons, now hours away from perfect alignment. Their gravitational pull had already begun affecting the planet below. Massive tides surged against coastal barriers. And atmospheric disturbances created swirling cloud patterns visible even from space. Mira stood at the viewport, her hands pressed against the transparent barrier, feeling the planetary rhythms through her newly enhanced senses. The resonance bond with Princess Neri had transformed her in ways that continued to reveal themselves: increased sensitivity to electromagnetic fields, awareness of biological systems, and most disconcertingly, occasional flashes of what could only be described as prescience. The Separatist faction has been contained, Captain Davin reported, joining her at the viewport, but intelligence suggests they were receiving off-world support. The unidentified vessel, Myra concluded. Confirmed. It's a Meridian warship, supposedly here on a diplomatic observation mission. Mira wasn't surprised. The Meridian Collective had opposed Thalessia's admission to the Interstellar Alliance for years, claiming the water world's biological technologies posed a contamination risk to other systems, or hoping to exploit the convergence chaos. She said, if the Thalassian royal family fails to stabilize the planetary systems, it would justify Meridian claims about uncontrolled biological contamination. Davin studied her with concern. You're different, Mira. This resonance thing has changed you. I'm still me, she insisted, though she wasn't entirely certain that was true anymore. Just ... more. The chamber door opened to admit Jorith, his injured arm bound with a regenerative bandage that pulsed with healing light. His patterns brightened visibly when he saw Mira, an involuntary reaction that Davin didn't miss. I'll check on our security. Preparations, Davin said, withdrawing tactfully. When they were alone, Jorith approached Mira. How are you adapting to the changes? It's overwhelming, she admitted. I can feel the planet systems, the currents, the weather patterns, the collective consciousness of Thalassian biospheres. How does Neri handle this all the time? She was born to it, Jorith said simply. But even for her, the coming convergence would be too much without you. His pattern shifted into a configuration she now recognized as personal rather than professional. Distinction she'd learned to read with her enhanced perception. There's something you're not telling me, Myra, said Jorith hesitated. The council has been discussing your situation. The traditional role of a royal resonator is ... complex. You mean they expect me to stay permanently? Historically, yes. A resonator would become part of the royal household, with all the privileges and responsibilities that entails. His patterns shifted again, revealing emotion he was trying to contain. But I've proposed an alternative. Mira raised an eyebrow. I'm listening. A provisional arrangement? Your presence would be required during critical planetary events, like the convergence, but you would be free to continue your diplomatic work between these periods. And the council agreed to this. Not yet. But after witnessing your abilities during the ceremony attack, They're more open to unconventional arrangements. Their conversation was interrupted by an urgent communication. Emissary Novak came. The voice of Security Chief Orlov. The Meridian vessel has launched multiple objects toward the planet's surface. Mira and Jorith rushed to the command center, where Thalassian officials and the human delegation were gathering. Holographic displays showed the trajectory of dozens of small objects entering the atmosphere. Biological disruptors, the Thalassian defense minister explained. Designed to interfere with our planetary communion systems, they're timing this. With the convergence, Jorith realized, if these devices activate as the moons align, it could prevent the royal family from stabilizing the climate systems. Mira finished. Princess Neri entered the chamber, her young face set with determination. We must begin the communion early, before the disruptors can deploy. The sovereign looked troubled. The early phase alignment isn't strong enough for traditional communion methods, but it might be enough with a fully realized resonance bond. Jorith suggested, looking at Mira. All eyes turned to her. You're asking me to participate in a planetary communion? Mira asked. I barely understand these new abilities. Jorith's pattern shifted into something she recognized as faith. Won't be alone. The communion chamber was a vast dome at the highest point of the royal palace. Open to the sky where the 3 moons were visible, approaching alignment. In the center, a pool of living water contained a concentrated ecosystem of Thalassius. Most responsive organisms, the Sovereign and Princess Neri, took positions at cardinal points around the pool. After a moment's hesitation, Mira joined them, guided by Jorith. Open yourself to the resonance, he instructed softly. Don't try to control it. Allow it to flow through you. As the communion began, Mira felt the now familiar connection with Neri strengthen, but this time the Sovereign's presence joined them, creating a triad of awareness that expanded beyond the chamber, beyond the palace, encompassing the entire planet. Through this expanded consciousness, Mira could sense the Meridian disruptors descending, each one a discordant note in Thalassia's planetary symphony. She could also feel the approaching gravitational peak of the convergence, a tsunami of cosmic energy about to crash upon the world. The disruptors are activating, Jorith reported, monitoring equipment nearby. Atmospheric interference is beginning. Mira felt Neri's consciousness falter as the disruption spread.
Oh.
The young princess wasn't strong enough to maintain the communion. Through this interference, without conscious decision, Mira deepened the resonance bond, taking on more of the connection burden. Through their shared awareness, she guided Neri, showing her how to adapt to the changing conditions together. They extended their influence, creating a counter-harmonic to the Meridian disruption. The living water in the pool responded. Organisms, arranging themselves into patterns that amplified their efforts, the convergence reached its peak. The 3 moons aligned perfectly, their combined gravitational force creating tidal pressures that should have torn through Thalassius oceans. With devastating effect, instead guided by the communion triad, the planetary systems absorbed and redistributed the energy. Weather patterns stabilized, tidal forces channeled into constructive rather than destructive flows. One by one, the Meridian disruptors faltered against the planet's coordinated biological response. When it was over, Mira emerged from the communion, tranced to find herself being supported by Jorith, his arms around her, his patterns showing concern and something deeper. You did it, he said softly. Both of you. Princess Neri, tired but triumphant, smiled at Mira. We balanced each other perfectly. Later, as celebrations began throughout Thalassia, Mira stood with Jorith on a balcony overlooking the capital city. The streets, celebrating both the successful navigation of the convergence and the foiling of the Meridian plot. The council has unanimously approved my proposal, Jorith told her. You'll be designated as an external resonator free to continue your diplomatic work, returning only for planetary events requiring your specific connection with Princess Neri. And what about the Meridians? Their interference has given the sovereign grounds to file a formal complaint with the Alliance. Your first-hand account will be crucial evidence. Mira looked out at the alien city that somehow now felt partially like home. So I'll be splitting my life between worlds. Is that so terrible? Jorith asked, his patterns shifting to reveal his personal feelings more clearly than words could express. Mira turned to him, seeing him with both her human perception and her new Thalassian senses, the complex beauty of his genetic patterns, the genuine emotion in his bioluminescence. No, she said softly, not terrible at all. She reached out, placing her hand against his. Their patterns synchronized momentarily, not the deep bond she shared with Neri, but something different, something personal and promising. I came here to negotiate a trade agreement, Mira said with a small laugh. Instead, I've become a genetic resonator to a princess, developed alien abilities, helped prevent an ecological disaster, and... She paused, looking at their joined hands. And Jorith prompted. And found connections I never expected, she finished. Above them. The three moons began their slow separation, their alignment complete. But the new alignments created on Thalassia between species, between worlds, between individuals, were just beginning.